Welcome back to Charter of Chains. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Disclaimer notice. This video may contain copyrighted material not always authorized by the copyright owner. This material is available for educational entertainment purposes and is believed to be fair use of copyrighted material as provided in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. Consult a qualified professional before making decisions based on this video's content. No liability or responsibility is assumed for actions taken or not taken based on the information provided. Today we're going to talk about why Americans cannot discharge their debt. What if I told you that the United States has been operating under a corporate veil for over 150 years, and that every debt you think you owe might not be what it seems? In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 6102, forcing Americans to surrender their gold to the Federal Reserve in exchange for paper. That paper, it was called a Federal Reserve Note, but here's the catch. It wasn't money, it was debt. No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. This clause is more than a suggestion. It was a contract, a command, a legal promise from our founding law that all payment of debts must be done in gold or silver. When Congress removed the gold standard and made debt instruments the currency, they broke that contract. They violated the Constitution. The lawful ability to discharge debt was replaced with a system that only allows transfer or perpetual obligation. In 1871, Congress passed the District of Columbia Organic Act, 16 Stat. 419, forming a municipal corporation known as the United States. This wasn't the republic you pledged allegiance to, it was a new corporate entity, created to operate in commerce. A corporation is a creature of the state. Hale v. Henkel, 201 U.S. 43, 1906. This new corporate system operates under commercial law, not constitutional law. You, the living man or woman, were unknowingly reclassified as a person, a legal fiction subject to statutory control. The 1871 Act, officially titled An Act to Provide a Government for the District of Columbia, was not a constitutional amendment. It was a municipal act that legally incorporated the United States as a private corporate entity. According to the U.S. Code, this act established a single municipal government for D.C. with a board of directors. See 16 Stat. 419 Chapter 62. What they did was create a dual system, one for the original republic, and one for the newly formed corporate U.S. operating under admiralty and commercial law. From that point on, federal agencies began to operate as corporate entities, with DUNS numbers and revenue operations. The republic still existed, but it was overlaid by a corporate fiction. When the United States became this corporate legal fiction, it no longer operated as the organic republic established by the Constitution. That's why today, Congress passes statutes and codes, not constitutional laws. You are treated as a person, a commercial vessel, a debtor, not as a sovereign man or woman under natural or common law. The U.S. Supreme Court has stated that the U.S. Congress does not have the authority to legislate for the people outside the Constitution. Downs v. Bidwell, 182 U.S. 244, 1901. Meanwhile, the currency system became increasingly controlled by private interests. The Federal Reserve is not federal, has no reserves, and is owned by private banks, like J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citibank. By 1971, the fraud expanded globally. President Nixon closed the gold window and defaulted on gold redemptions to foreign nations. Charles de Gaulle and others had tried to redeem gold, but the U.S. had printed far more dollars than it had gold to back. This was not a mistake. It was deliberate fraud, repeated from the collapse of continental currency. The system today only works because people believe in it, believe the dollar has value, believe the government will honor its debts. But the truth is, there is no asset backing the dollar. The trust is enforced through taxation, military, courts, and credit systems. The currency itself is debt, controlled by a private bank, not your government. So when they say the dollar is based on trust, they really mean you're forced to use it, because we say so, and we'll punish you if you don't. That's not trust. That's coercion wrapped in legalese. After the Revolutionary War, the U.S. issued continental certificates to pay soldiers and suppliers. These certificates were IOUs, promises to pay in the future, often redeemed through land grants. Congress shall have power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. This clause was not merely a power, it was a contractual obligation. When Congress exercised its right to borrow money, it entered into a binding agreement with the people and creditors to repay those debts. By converting those debts into long-term national obligations, and then never honoring them, Congress breached that contract. But they never truly paid. Instead, these certificates, along with other debt instruments, were bundled and converted into the first national debt, not paid, transformed. And what did the government do with this national debt? They didn't pay the soldiers who fought for them. They borrowed more money using the debt as collateral. Then they turned around and imposed that same debt back onto the people through taxes. In short, the very people who were promised payment ended up paying the debt themselves, through a lifetime of labor and taxation. To put it plainly, imagine John borrows $1,000 from Sam and signs a contract to pay him back. But instead of repaying Sam, John uses the IOU to take out a new loan from Peter, then tells Sam he now owes that money through taxes. Sam went from being the lender to the one forced to pay the loan he funded. That's what Congress did to the American people. And it's the foundation of the fraudulent national debt we live under today. That debt, through creative accounting, became the foundation of the U.S. monetary system, and it continues today. In 1971, President Richard Nixon closed the gold window. The U.S. told the world, "We will no longer redeem dollars for gold. We are all Keynesians now." Richard Nixon. Why? Because the U.S. had printed far more dollars than gold to back it. This was not an accident, it was intentional global fraud. The same kind of fraud they pulled in 1780, in 1871, and again in 1933. Today, the national debt isn't a number on a screen, it's a claim on your labor, your birth certificate, your identity, your children's future. The Federal Reserve? It's not federal. It has no reserves. It's a cartel of private banks authorized to issue debt to the public and charge interest on it. The Federal Reserve banks are not a part of the federal government. New York Fed official statement. When the people forget who they are, they become property. You are not a person, you are not a debtor, you are a living soul, and it is time to remember. The Republic still exists, it lives in you. The Constitution was not repealed, it was overlaid. And you have the power to remove the overlay by reclaiming your status. But do not be angry at those currently in power. Many may not even know what has truly occurred. This goes back generations, to the founding fathers, who likely never foresaw how the system would be manipulated. Much of this information was hidden, classified, or legally encoded beyond recognition. Even those in government agencies, finance, and the courts often don't fully understand the structure they've inherited. Others may know, but remain silent. Regardless, arguing and pointing fingers will not solve this. What we need are solutions without conflict, strategy without chaos, unity without blame. Educate others. Demand real money and full disclosure. Stop identifying as a commercial entity. Hold corporations and governments accountable. Forgive those misled and focus on correction, not destruction. They broke the contract, they broke the covenant. Now it's time we return to the law, the real law, the people's law. Article 1, Section 10 still stands. Gold and silver are the only lawful money. Everything else is fraud. Hash expose the debt, hash return to law, hash know who you are.